So let's kind of go through here and just kind of wrapping up. We have 5 tips for success. Tip number 1, know your avatar. Okay. Make a drawing of your avatar. I worked with a podcaster recently. I said, who's your podcast audience? He says, I do it for administrators. Great. What kind of administrator? New administrators, 60-year-old administrators, that 30-year-old that has a family that's looking to go from assistant principal to superintendent in the next 2 years. Who are you speaking to? Know who your avatar is. Draw that up. Hang it on there. The person I was working with actually gave me a drawing. It was awesome. She did it on her iPad. It was a drawing of an administrator at a desk with paper just built up all over the place. She says, I want to do a podcast for administrators who don't know how to organize for their new position. And I want to help them become more successful by being more organized. I said, that's awesome. Know who you're speaking to. Create your content strategy around there. Understand that everything we do, and I mean everything, that single thing that we do, you're creating a mousetrap. You are creating a mousetrap. Every blog post is a mousetrap to get people to give you their email address. All the content that you do is designed to get people to give you the email address. Every social post that you do is designed to get people back onto your website. Every newsletter you create. And we can talk about creating a newsletter with 1,000 links, and we can talk about creating a newsletter with 1 link and 1 solid focal point and call to action. I do them both, and there's different reasons for doing all that stuff. But everything that we do here is creating that mousetrap to get your emails. Because ultimately, you might be in a situation where you're talking to a public relations firm, and they're going to say, all right, I know your blog numbers, I see your social, but let's talk newsletters. Show me how many email newsletters you have and what your open rate is. If you can show that you have X number of 1,000 emails and you have a 30% open rate, that's money in your pocket right there. And that's knowing how to build newsletters that are actually going to convert. Tip number 3, segment. Okay, that's why every single thing except for the one says I am a. So I can just focus on things. In other words, today, if you're already on my newsletter and you signed up for this webinar, you probably didn't get an email from me today saying, hey, we have a webinar. You only got an email from me that says, by the way, here's the calendar link. Don't forget to show up. Okay. If you're already signed up for the webinar and I send you an email today that says, did you know we have a webinar? You're going to look at me like, why are you sending this to me? You might even not even shown up. But by segmenting it, I can say, send this email to the people who have already signed up and send this email, which is bigger, which has more graphics to it. It's a little bit eye-catchier. Send this to the people who aren't showing up yet. Social media. Automate, but keep things personal. So it's okay to set up a funnel. It's okay to set up a sequence. And as Tom said a couple times, make sure that your first name is on it. And I track these things. I do A/B tests with first names and I do A/B tests without names. So I might say, hey, Dan, how's your podcast going? And I might do an email that says 10 reasons to make a good podcast. And they're the same email, but I know that when I say, hey, Dan, how's your podcast going? I'm going to get more people signing up for that and clicking into the email. More people clicking onto the email, Gmail likes you, and your numbers go up from there. And again, with email marketing, don't be afraid to thin the pack. There's something called a cold subscriber. Tom, maybe you can explain what a cold subscriber is, but basically I go into all my cold subscribers and I say, if you haven't interacted with my content in 6 to 8 months, you might not be getting it. You might not be interested. And I don't want to pay for you to be on my list. Bye-bye. And that's okay. I'm also at that part in ConvertKit where I'm at a limit where if I go above a certain number, I get charged like another $400 or $500. And so I'd rather kill thousands of cold subscribers that aren't interacting with me, that aren't ever going to pay for my content, than to have them on my newsletter and I'm paying for them. Tom, what is a cold subscriber? Is it 60 days, 6 months? What is the definition? Maybe for Aweber and for Edgar, they're two different things. What is the length of time before you become a cold subscriber?
Yeah, it really depends on the frequency that you send. So I follow a lot of email marketers who they'll email every single day. So they might say that if you haven't opened in the past 20 emails from me, then I'm going to identify you as a cold subscriber. For somebody who emails weekly, you might say you haven't opened a weekly newsletter in 6 to 8 weeks, and that's, 2 months, 60 days. So it really depends. There's not like a solid definition that everyone follows. Like, it's really on you, like how you want to define your cold subscribers. Like, do you want people on your list who don't want your stuff? Or do you want people on your list who want the value that you're sending? And, one thing that, I've seen work really, really well, is invite people to unsubscribe and do it often.
Yeah.
You can do that
at the top of your list.
You can do that at the very top of your emails. I follow Nick Loper, who writes really good emails. He has a podcast. I think it's called the Side Hustle Show.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom of his emails, he has, and this is automated, right? Like it's in the footer of his emails. It says, you subscribed on this date. So it reminds you of the date that you subscribed, which is really smart, because a lot of people, they'll sign up for your freebie, your giveaway, your PDF, your templates or whatever. They'll download that and they'll just completely forget about you, for 6 months, right? They won't open any of your emails. They'll ignore them. And then one day they will notice one of those emails and they'll mark you as spam. And that actually really harms you. And it harms your deliverability. So it's really helpful to just have that at the bottom and just say, hey, just as a reminder, you signed up on TeacherCast, you have your domain name, this, .com on this date. That's really, really helpful because it's a reminder. And then invite them, if you no longer want to receive these emails, click the unsubscribe link right here. And you can have all that within your emails. So I definitely recommend that for sure.
I've even had mine set up to say, if you want to unsubscribe from the sequence, like, okay,
perfect.
You guys might say at the end, don't send me any more stuff. The webinar is horrible, but I still want to get all your podcasting stuff. You've got the manual option in all of my emails to say out of this sequence, but keep me here.
Yeah. And you can do that by preference, so Jeff, you could have written today, if you want to stay on my list, but you never want to hear about webinar opportunities, click here, and then by clicking there, you could tag them, no-webinars, and then you would segment all those people out anytime you have a webinar opportunity, which is really helpful.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.